Okay, so good morning, everyone, and welcome to another one of our Tuesday morning info session webinars through Impact Beaverton. Happy you could be here with us this morning. Today's topic is hiring right, recruiting and onboarding best practices. One of the things Gustavo and I have heard from many of our clients that we work with here at Impact Beaverton is the challenges and ongoing challenges they have had in recruiting and keeping top-notch employees through the pandemic and then beyond the pandemic currently. And so we thought this was a good, timely topic for everybody. Hopefully you'll be able to pick up some really good tips. If you have not already selected your language through the little globe button at the bottom of your screen, please select English or Spanish so that you can hear through the presentation. Jessica Dover, as usual, will be doing our translating throughout the session today. And if you have questions along the way, you can either post your question in the chat. Gustavo and I will be monitoring the chat, or you can do a raise hand function and we'll see that. So our presenter today is Jessica Ortman. Jessica works with True Calling Recruitment, a division of HR Annie, and specializes in HR-related stuff, including recruitment, retention, employee engagement, and a host of other things. And I will turn it right over to you, Jessica. So glad you could be here with us this morning. It's all yours.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. This is my favorite topic to talk about, so I'll always welcome the opportunity to join a webinar or have a discussion around these areas with folks. And especially the Beaverton Chamber has been such a lovely place to network and learn more about everybody else's business, and of course get to share the thing I'm passionate about. So thank you for the opportunity to be here. And we have a lot of information to go through today. We're kind of covering a lot of broad topics. And so my hope is that if there are any, points throughout the presentation that you're like, oh, I would love to drill in on this area a little bit more, feel free to drop, your questions in the chat, and we can always kind of do a round robin, circle back around at the end and make sure we hit your questions. So let's dig in. And before that, actually, for those of you that are joining today, I don't believe I see any familiar names on here of people we've worked with in the past. So do you mind just dropping a chat, introducing yourself, and maybe what organizations you're from, just for some context? Okay. Good morning, Gemma from Barcelona Counseling. Okay. I'll keep my ear out for anyone else. I see Michaela, HD Home Care, primarily recruiting caregivers. Awesome. Great. We have a few clients that do that as well. That's a really tight industry right now too. So I understand what you're going through. Okay. Lovely. So to begin here, let's go over our agenda. And again, there's a lot of information in here, so hang in there with me because there's a lot of stuff that touch recruitment. So first of all, we're going to be covering quickly just what it means to be an equal employment opportunity employer, and then how that intersects with diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is kind of the foundation for how we build out our processes. Then we're going to be talking about the prep work. So before jumping into recruitment, there are a few things we recommend you have dialed in that are going to set you up for success once you do begin recruitment. Then we want to talk about your hiring process. What is it that you need to do as you're actively recruiting? And then once you're done with your recruitment and you've secured a candidate, the work doesn't stop there. There's still a lot of work ahead of us with our onboarding processes. So I'm going to be going over some best practices in that area. And one thing I'll say that you'll probably hear me say again throughout this is that I think in the past, recruitment used to be a really individual task where it's like, oh, I'm going to hire one person and then it's done and we're done with recruitment. Whereas if we're kind of shifting our focus to what it takes to successfully recruit in this year and, coming up into 2023, it's really, we need to be thinking about all of our strategy of what are we doing to set ourselves up for success for a home run. There's a lot of prep work. There's of course a lot of intentionality we need to have during our process, and then we need to kind of cushion our work and seal the deal by making sure that we retain our hire, because that's equally, and if so not more important than the actual recruitment process. So that's the first little piece I'll drop today. So Commitment to EEO and DEIB, just for those of you that have seen those statements and maybe have never dug into what that actually means behind that. Equal employment opportunity is a principle meaning that all people should essentially have the right to work and advance within an organization based on their merit and ability, regardless of any other component, really. Legally, specifically, you're not able to make any decisions based on any of these protected classes, but which is race, sex, color, religion, disability, national origin, or age. But truly, there shouldn't really be any other factors that are swaying our decision other than that merit and ability. So that's what we're going to be really focusing on, is building processes so that we're able to clearly evaluate someone's merit and ability. What we want our process to reflect is we want it to be accessible for lots of groups of people. We want it to be informative. So not only are we requesting information, we're also sharing information with folks. We want it to be equitable. So we're not letting little biases slip in and make decisions. We want to make sure we're giving a fair process to everybody. We want it to be welcoming, consistent, and non-discriminatory, which I'll teach you how we can set ourselves up for success with all of those pieces. How do we accomplish this? We really need to get clear on what our needs are for the role. We need to build a structure to make sure we're evaluating those pieces. We need to broadcast it to a wide net of people. We need to follow the same process for all. And we need to ditch those gut feelings or hiring for culture fit or those things that we can't quite put our thumb on that we're feeling. And I want to pause on that bullet point right there, just because the culture fit piece, I think what I've seen come from that when people say, oh, I don't really know if they fit with our culture, it's kind of a slippery slope of sometimes what that means is this person isn't like us, or, maybe they're a little bit different than us. And what I want to make sure we're getting away from, and one of the benefits to having an equal employment opportunity process and diversity within your organization is that people that are have different skill sets or different backgrounds or, different walks of life, they bring different perspective to your organization, which just only makes you stronger. So instead of maybe thinking of culture fit, I see a lot of people, maybe what you're looking for is somebody that is in alignment with your mission, vision, and values. It's not that they don't fit with your culture. It's that you're wanting somebody that's aligned with what your business is trying to do. So I want to make that clear, is if you're seeing that come up a lot, how do we implement a question into our interview processes that evaluates if somebody's in line with our company mission, which I think sometimes is what people are trying to accomplish when they're saying that comment. So just wanted to share the differentiator there that I see. Okay. Now we know that that's what our goal is. It's important to dive into what is the prep work that we need to do before we begin a recruitment. Sometimes we get really excited, or we kind of get into panic mode and we're like, we need to hire somebody right now. And if we don't go through these steps first, you're going to end up drawing this process out a lot longer, and it gets a little bit messy along the way. So the time that we spend preparing for the recruitment is well worth it in the end. So the first thing I wanted to share, sometimes I see job description and job ad get used interchangeably. So I wanted to just quickly go over what a job description is and what the differentiator is between that and a job ad. A job description, I pulled just a general HR generalist job description here, which really the purpose of this document is for us to look internally and say, what are the essential functions that this job performs? What are the qualifications? What are the minimum education? What are the physical requirements of the job? And it's an opportunity for us to get that all out on paper. It's kind of our rough draft here, where we're just like, this is all we need, nothing fancy. These are the requirements of the position. And before you begin a recruitment, if you don't have a job description, I highly recommend that be something that you put together. It helps a lot in the long run when you're talking about setting expectations with employees. If an employee ever needs to go out on, disability, or there's an accommodation required, which again goes into diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, that may come up, down the line, we're making sure that we're able to give somebody a document that they can take to their provider to assess if they can perform the job. You're able to use this in performance conversations with people. You're able to, help make sure people are meeting their goals. So great document to begin on. And if you do already have one of these, when you decide to go recruit, we recommend you review this before you begin the recruitment process, because sometimes, requirements change, duties change. So it's good to make sure these are up to date. And one area I've seen, adjust with just different trends going on is education. I think there had been, certain years where we have to have a requirement of you have to have a degree or you have to have this or that. And when we've kind of put the pressure test on there for education, it's turned out there are some positions where, maybe similar experience or relevant experience in the past is a good equivalent to an education. So really pressure test these requirements that you have listed and say, are these things still true? And are these pieces still required in order to be a qualified candidate for this job? Because that will open up your pool if you are, more open to looking at that. One other thing I see here on job descriptions that I've been recommending lately is you see on the bottom here that says 2 years of HR generalist experience. We've kind of gotten in a habit of saying, oh, you need this many years of experience. And what I'll share with clients is that if we're telling somebody, you need 10 years of experience in HR, there's one candidate who's maybe been in HR for 10 years that started off as a coordinator, moved into a manager, and now is a director. And maybe that's what we're trying to get at. But maybe there's also another kind of a candidate who's been in HR for 10 years, but they've served as a coordinator that are helping with employee file management. And that's okay for both. But the point is, instead of, making a generalized statement saying how many years you want of someone, I want to encourage you to quantify what that means. So what is it that you're hoping to get out of somebody that has 10 years of experience? Are you wanting somebody that's overseen projects, overseen teams, been, a part of leadership strategy? If so, make sure that you're putting those pieces as a requirement versus the blanket statement of the years. So once we have dialed in what it is that we truly need and what we're truly looking for, the next step is turning that into then a job ad, which is a job advertisement. This is more of a marketing tool. So do you see how on this document it says, are you passionate about HR? Do you enjoy supporting businesses? It's more of a call to action. It's more fun language. We're giving people an idea of what is our company paying? What are our benefits? Where is our location and our schedule? What does our company do? What does the day-to-day look like? This document is essentially your job description, but turned with a marketing focus. This is what you're going out and posting on your different job boards. This is going to help you attract the best talent and attract a broader pool of candidates, because it's more geared to engage with people versus just say physical requirements, if that makes sense. So job description, job app. What you'll see in here is in Oregon, by the way, there are, best practices for pay equity, and there are laws around pay equity. So if you have any questions, I see that be sometimes a hesitation from employers not wanting to post what their pay ranges are. But what I'm seeing is that the clients that are able to post their pay ranges are the ones that are getting the applicants. So if there's any, roadblock or hurdle in your way where you're saying, I feel worried to post our pay ranges because I don't want our internal employees to get upset, that is something we also can help clients out with is figure out what is your internal pay strategy and how do you have conversations with your current employees so that you're not restrained from being able to advertise your range, because that's how you're going to get candidates in this day and age. And then that was the compensation piece. Then benefits and offerings. Again, prior to starting your recruitment, have you thought about what benefits and offerings your company has? What is it that's attractive to candidates these days? I'll tell you, when I'm talking with candidates and I'm asking them what it is that they're looking for in their next positions or why they're leaving their current employer, it's usually around one of these areas. Either they're looking for advancement and growth and they don't have that in their current role. Maybe they need benefits or different kind of benefits. They're looking for stability. They want to be aligned with the company's mission, values, and culture. They want scheduler remote work or flexible schedule remote work. Maybe they want a pay adjustment. These are primarily the driving factors for candidates these days. So again, before going into your recruitment process, think, what areas can we provide value to candidates? You don't have to be the best in all of these offerings, but your company probably does, have competitive advantage in two or three of these areas. So figure out what area your company can capitalize in. Make sure that we are, again, integrating this into our job ad, and make sure that you and your managers or who's ever interviewing knows how to talk about these things to candidates when they're meeting with them. Yes, Rob.
So I have a question, Jessica, because this comes up with a number of the businesses that we work with that are things like restaurants or cleaning services where remote work isn't part of what they can do, right? You can't serve customers in a restaurant if you're working at home. And so what are some of the strategies for businesses that are like very customer hands-on heavy, can adapt around either with scheduling or other things to help give more flexibility to workers than saying, yeah, you can work from home?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And we have a lot of clients in that same boat where they're like, we are frontline, we can't be working from home. One thing I have encouraged employers to do is look at the way that your schedule is structured for some of those positions. Do you have to have like a weekly schedule that's published every single week? Can you give people a month at a time so they know how to plan for their vacations? Are you able to bunch their days off with 2 days in a row instead of having a Wednesday and a Saturday? Could they maybe have, a Sunday and a Monday just so that they know they can regularly plan for their lives? Because part of that ends up giving them the work-life balance that they might be missing when their schedule is changing every week. They don't know what days they have off. They don't know when they can spend time with their kids or their families. So that's one helpful strategy around scheduling. Are you able to allow them to work 4 10s instead of 5 8s? One other area that I see, restaurant industries be able to focus on is a lot of places maybe don't offer benefits. You don't always have to have, the benefits that you think about. Sometimes, if you're able to have medical, dental, vision, that will help you a ton. Maybe you have that for employees working 30 hours or more. And those are the group of people you're offering it to. Maybe you're able to offer, more PTO, or maybe you're able to offer continuing education funds. There's some things you can play around with that. Same for advancement and growth. Or do you have any cross-training opportunities or a cross-training program where you're preparing people to be ready for management or leadership, or teaching them how to order inventory for you? Having some sort of progression where people can continue to learn and develop and bring value to the business. And then culture, mission, and values. Is there anything that you can do as an organization that's, we celebrate people's work anniversaries by taking them out to dinner, or we have company picnics. There are a lot of ways to get creative with those other components that also carry a ton of weight for people.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Jessica, very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And then, okay, so now that we've done all of that prep work, now we know what we need because we've gone through or updated our job description. We know we're competitive because we've reviewed, our compensation and made sure we're able to share that. We know what we can offer when it comes to benefits or what our competitive edge is, and we know how to market that because we're taking all that information and putting that into a job advertisement to advertise out to candidates. So now we can begin the recruitment process. And you'll see if this legwork isn't done prior to trying to recruit somebody, it can cause a lot of messes if we don't know what we can pay them, or if we don't know what we expect of them, or the duties or the qualifications are. There's a lot of room for managers to make decisions based on those gut feelings. So that's, again, why this legwork is also part of your DEI strategy, is you're able to really set expectations, be clear on what you want, what your managers want, what you're all evaluating on, so that we don't let the bias slip in. Okay, so hiring process. Let's begin talking about what your process is. And there's no right or wrong answer for what your process is, but what I will say is that there are, certain answers that can get you more efficient results than other answers. And so I just want to talk about some best practices in this area. So first of all, when we're talking about candidates applying, let's think about the candidate journey, right? I think as often as you can put yourself in the candidate's shoes, the better your process will be, approaching this with empathy. So what are we requesting them when they're submitting their information on Indeed, or if we have a job posting, are we requiring them? Is it like a one-click apply? Do they need to create a whole, resume and cover letter and redo their resume and their job application and fill out a form that's going to take them a half an hour? And what I will say is that we've found this happy medium process with clients where the 5-minute rule, if it takes more than 5 minutes for somebody to apply to your job, your candidate pool is going to drop a lot. So how are we making this efficiently? What information do we want to give them in our job ad? And what information do we expect back from them at this point of the process? When it comes to cover letters, that's something that I've been a really common practice in the past. But we've found at this point, the clients that are requesting cover letters are having a big drop off in candidates. So what I've been asking is, what is it that you want to glean out of a cover letter? And is there a more efficient way to get that information at this point of the process? I also picture interviewing as kind of courting, right? So how much information have you given someone, and does that match what you expect them to give you? If you're not sharing, pay range, or you're not sharing a ton of information with the candidate, we can't request that they write a 5-page essay on why they want to work here so badly. We need to make sure we have a teeter-totter that's balanced on, what are we giving and what are we taking, and at what points does it make sense for us to give more and to ask for more. So at the beginning, it's a smaller dance, both back and forth. So let's make sure at the beginning we're following the 5-minute rule. It's totally appropriate to request a resume, and then if any of you use Indeed or any of your other applicant tracking systems, I do recommend having 1 or 2 simple questions that just say, hey, please confirm you're able to work this schedule and at this location. Great. And then maybe one more pre-screening question that just says, why are you interested in this position? And from that, you can maybe glean what you were trying to get from the candidate's cover letter. How do you contact candidates? So when they do submit their information, are you just sending them an email back? Are you trying to call them? Do you send them a text? Texting is one thing that's kind of new that has not maybe been the way we've gone about recruiting in the past. But what I've found from talking with hundreds of candidates is they actually do prefer it. It's convenient for them. It's a lot quicker at getting a response to and from the candidate, which means we're able to get them in for interviews faster. So if you haven't thought about approaching that, I would recommend it. And what we end up doing is when we see an applicant apply, we first of all give them a call and leave a voicemail. We then follow up with an email, and then we will usually send them a text. And based on what position you're hiring for, and based on what you feel is appropriate for your industry, of course you can tailor that. And if you ever have questions on that, we're happy to give you our 2 cents. How many rounds of interviews do you conduct? So are you going through 2 steps of interviews? Are you going through 5 steps of interviews? And on this topic, it's really appropriate to adjust depending on what position you're hiring for. So, for entry-level positions, we recommend maybe 1, maybe 2 interviews. Usually that would look like maybe a first initial phone call, and maybe they come meet with your team in person, and that should probably wrap it up. And then maybe for manager or other positions, it might be more appropriate to have 2 or 3 rounds of interviews, where it's an initial phone interview, maybe 1 video interview, and then a final in-person meeting. If we're going too far beyond that, we have an opportunity to lose candidates and have to keep starting back over from scratch. So the good news is that sometimes we feel like we need to meet with people multiple times because we're not getting the read on them, or we're not getting all the information that we need out of those 2 or 3 meetings. So in a few minutes, we're going to be talking about making sure you're building an intentional interview process with intentional questions that will hopefully help you uncover that and get to know the candidate better in those first 2 rounds that you're meeting them. Are the interviews virtual or in person? With that, I just shared kind of the way that we typically approach that, or that we guide clients to handle their interviews. I know in the past there was a lot of only in-person interviews, and for some positions that makes total sense again. And for some positions it is worth thinking, what would it take if our second interview was virtual? Because we're thinking of these candidates, they're having to take PTO, or they're having to tell their boss they're going to be on a late lunch and having another appointment. And if we're thinking about, the amount of time it takes for them to, have to request that time off and drive to our site, we're going to get behind again in their other interview process if other clients are meeting with them virtually on their lunch breaks where they don't have to take time off. So don't let that be the reason why you aren't moving forward with people. And then what questions do you ask? Again, we're going to be covering this in a moment, building those intentional interview templates, but it's an important question to ask yourself. And then who needs to be involved in these steps and why? And does anybody else need to be? There's no right or wrong answer, but sometimes, we see people need to have approval from 10 of their team members. And again, that just makes the scheduling process go longer. If you're thinking about the amount of time that you should take to interview a candidate, if it's going longer than 2 weeks, they're probably going to be, gathering other opportunities. That's more for manager level positions. If you're working on an entry level recruitment, by the time that you post a job, talk to the candidate and extend an offer, I would say that if you don't do that all within the same week, you're probably going to have to keep restarting over. So who needs to be involved? Can we get them all together quick enough to have those 2 interviews, within that 1 week? And if your process is not allowing you to do that, I highly recommend just revisiting who's involved. How can we figure out how to get these schedules together in a faster fashion to get you the results you need? Okay. Then I want to go through this slide pretty quickly, but this slide is just a reminder that when we're talking with candidates and, let's pretend we go through all that process, we're contacting the candidates, we're getting the interview scheduled, they're showing up to the meeting. People are coming from all different walks of life and, again, experiences. The person in the top left corner, let's pretend they were so excited for your interview, they spilled coffee on themselves, and they had to run home really quick and change before they got to your interview. So maybe they're showing up a little bit frazzled or anxious or nervous or, just kind of out of sorts. It's our job as interviewers to remember, people are nervous when they're coming in here. How do we set the stage? How do we manage this process? How do we create an environment for them that they can join, they can relax, and they can provide, the answers to your questions that they have? Please remember all the shoes the candidates are coming from. Maybe the bottom left-hand side, maybe somebody needs this job because they need, money in order to purchase a car. So maybe they're taking public transportation and the bus line is running a few minutes behind. Let's give people a little bit of grace. If there's patterns showing up where they can't get to something on time, of course, that's a different issue, but just remember there are all these different, reasons why people are seeking employment, and they're coming from different walks of life. Maybe in the middle, somebody needs this job to get their dream home, and they're, again, really nervous. Maybe nothing happened, but they just know there's a lot riding on this opportunity. We need to make sure they feel welcome. Maybe they had some medical news in their family that was tough before heading into their interview. Maybe they found out their kid failed a test and they're just distracted and a little bit irritated in the back of their mind. There's all these different ways they're showing up here. So how do we make sure when they're walking in, they feel comfortable? We're also giving them a little bit of a break, understanding that sometimes when candidates come in for interviews, they might have these different emotions. When people are nervous, they talk fast, or they get really timid and they might not be able to respond as eloquently as you would hope. Maybe they're really hopeful and they're just, in their head and they're shy and they're stuttering, or maybe they're intimidated and they don't have great eye contact or handshakes because you're the owner or manager of a company that they look up to, and maybe they haven't interacted with a lot of other people like you. So they're getting used to it. Maybe they are frantic because they got stuck in traffic. Just, again, I just want to remind you to keep these things in mind. And when you are evaluating candidates' answers, please don't not move forward with the candidate because they talked too fast in the interview, or please account for just some human error or human nerves as we're going through this process with them, and remembering it's our opportunity to make sure they feel comfortable and guide them. So that brings me to this next slide of the interview structure. So again, let's remember these people are coming in from all these different emotions and feelings, and we're jumping in and we're going to start asking them questions, right? So the way and the order that we're doing that gives people an opportunity to come in, take a deep breath, gather themselves, gain some context, and this will help you. If you're able to do that, this will help you get the best read on the candidate and take away some of those other, margins of error where people could have those nerves or other pieces that could contribute to a change in behavior that maybe they don't normally have. So what I recommend is having an interview template and an interview structure that you use for each individual round. For instance, your phone screen template would look different than your in-person interview template, with different questions. You know what you're going to ask in advance, and you've structured it to flow in a way that, again, is that give and take of information. So in this example, this is normally how we structure our phone screens. We always ask people, okay, so what do you know about us at this time? What caught your interest? We get a better understanding of what they know about us. Then this is an opportunity for us to come back and share, great, okay, that looks like you looked at our website. Let me give you some more context. We started in this year. This is how many employees we have. These are the services we provide. This is my position. This is the department I oversee. This is how many other people in our department. As you're sharing this with candidates and giving them that context, they're having an opportunity to settle in, get comfortable with their surroundings, get the context so that when you're asking them questions, they understand, how to respond in a way that is applicable to you. Just like if I didn't know any of the companies any of you were working at or that you came from, and I'm just talking to people, I don't know how to tailor my answers in the best way. So think about that for the candidates. The more information you share with them about the company, the surroundings, the department, the better they are able to give you an answer that's applicable and helpful for you. Then we ask, what's most important to you in your current job search? This question, very important. And again, going back to that benefits slide, this one, I'd say 95% of the time, the answer comes from they're looking for one of these. They're looking for something different in one of these areas. So let's pretend they say, oh, I'm looking for advancement and growth. Great. Okay. Well, then how are we, when they say that, I'm looking for advancement and growth, you're not going to be like, okay, great. Let's move on to the next question. We're thinking, great. Is that something we can provide to them? If that's an area your company is really strong at, this is our opportunity where we put on our sales hat, because recruitment is kind of sales. We're going back and saying, oh, you want an advancement and growth? Great. Let me tell you a little bit about our plan here. This is how we help our current employees advance and grow. Hopefully, I'm glad we're talking. If that's the case, this is our opportunity to give them information, take some information. It's a dance, right? So in this next section, again, in the first call, I always recommend we're talking about the location they'd be required to work at, the schedule. We're talking about our compensation range and making sure it aligns with what they're looking for. We make sure they are aware of any sort of pre-employment screening that we do. That way, any of these topics aren't going to be coming up at the last minute after we've invested several hours interviewing each other and then finding out our pay range or it doesn't align or they can't work the schedule. Let's get ahead of that and make sure everybody's on the same page. It's really beneficial to both the candidate and to you. And these conversations could be handled with some delicacy. And the few things I typically see pop up when it comes to compensation range, typically the way I have that conversation with candidates is I say, hey, on our job ad, this is our range that's posted. Do you have a target in mind that you've been aiming for? See what they say. Maybe we say, maybe they don't want to say, maybe they say, no, I want to keep the conversation going. Just like, okay, great. Well, just wanted to make sure you saw our range and that you'd be targeting something within that so that we both are on the same page. Okay, great. We'll talk about the specifics later, but just wanted to make sure you saw that. One thing I will say that's a compliance stick point is that in Oregon, we are not legally allowed to ask somebody what they're currently being paid or what they have been paid at their previous companies. In Oregon, we are allowed to ask somebody what their target pay is or what they're hoping to make, but we cannot ask them what they do or what they have made in the past. So making sure that you bake that into part of your process as a compliance point. Because really, if we're thinking about being an equal opportunity employer again, we are focused on hiring somebody for their merit and ability. And that's how we want to evaluate their pay as well. When we're talking about pre-employment screening, this is another little compliance area. You cannot ask somebody, hey, do you have a background check? Or do you have a background hit? Do you have a record in the past? We're not allowed to ask people that, but we can say, hey, part of our pre-employment process, if we do get to the point of making an offer, is we do conduct pre-employment background checks. I want to confirm that's something you'd be willing to participate in, and people can say yes or no. I do recommend staying away from any conversations about what's on record. If somebody brings up like, oh, I do have a hit, or I have something on my past, just like, oh, okay, I hear you. We can evaluate, that later down the line. I just want to confirm you'd be willing to participate. And if you do have something that pops up, we can evaluate our company policy and if that would be, an issue later down the line. And we have a whole compliance slide at the end of this topic, so we can talk more about that too if there are any questions, since I know that's a really vulnerable and an area as an employer that, sometimes is awkward to navigate, but it doesn't have to be. And then again, after we go through that important stuff, we're usually talking about, tell me about your company you worked at. Why did you leave? What did you do? How about your position before that? What did you do there? Why did you leave that? And then down at the bottom, we leave room for a few other questions that come up based on the non-negotiables, which we'll assess on the next slide. But having this structure again, it's a way that a candidate can settle in. You can talk about things that are more factual versus, coming in and giving somebody a hardball question of like, what is your biggest weakness and what's your biggest strength right off the bat when they haven't had time to like settle in or give you any information back and forth. So hopefully that makes sense. All right. So assessing non-negotiables. So if we're thinking about a barista, and I encourage people to drop some chats here at this point too. If you're thinking about hiring a barista, I used to work at Dutch Bros and hired baristas all the time. If we're thinking about what are our non-negotiables for that? So if we're putting together our job description for a barista and we're thinking, what skills is it that I really need somebody to have? What comes to mind for you? And why is it important? The reason it's important to have this conversation with yourself beforehand is to make sure, again, we're creating questions that draw this information out of the candidate. So when I think barista, I think somebody with good customer service, somebody that's able to multitask, somebody that's able to work in a fast-paced environment, right? So maybe those are my 3 requirements that I have on my job description. Perfect. What do we do with that information? Now that we know that that's what we need, we build questions that help us assess if a candidate has these qualities. So if we're thinking customer service, what are we asking somebody? Can you tell me about a time you've provided great customer service? Perfect. Well, they're going to give you some insight to a time they provided great customer service, and you can assess if that's, the quality of the answer that you're looking for. Multitasking. Can you tell me about a time you've juggled multiple competing priorities? What were they? How'd you handle it? Perfect. That's going to give us a little window into how they're able to multitask or what sort of multitasking they've done in the past. Fast paced. What's the busiest time they've had at work? What was happening? Great. We'll see if their busiest time matches up with something that'd be equivalent with our busiest time. That way, again, we're making our decisions based on somebody's ability to perform the job, not anything else like, what is your horoscope sign or what's your favorite ice cream flavor? Like that does not help us determine what candidate we should hire. So let's stick to their abilities. And one thing you'll see as a pattern here with the type of questions we're asking is when I'm building out interview templates, I like to ask people for stories about times they've done stuff. Some questions sometimes I see come through on interview templates, for instance, with customer service, it might be like, how do you feel about customer service? It might be like, oh, I feel great about customer service. I'm great at customer service. Okay, that does not give us a window or does not help give us insight to their customer service ability. If we have a lot of questions like that in our interview templates, sometimes that's why we feel like we need to meet with them 4 or 5 times because we can't quite get a read on what we think that they're able to do. If we're asking them questions about stories they've done in the past, this helps us get a better feel for them and build that relationship quicker. So that's why these type of questions are super helpful. And on the topic of these questions, there are certain ways to go about asking them. So we're going to use this thing called the STAR method. And if you're zoning out at this point, I recommend tuning back in and taking some notes on this because this is my favorite recruitment trick. And STAR method is a way that you go about asking those story-based questions. So what this stands for is situation, task, action, and result. And if we think about any good movie or any good book, they're all going to have this storyline, right? Where the situation, they're setting the stage. Task, somebody gets tasked with something to do. They need to take action. Action, what is it that they actually did? And then result, how did it all turn out? So when people are talking to you about these customer service stories or any of those pieces that they have, we're wanting to dig in and make sure we have, the whole picture here. And again, remembering people are coming in frantic, nervous, all these different emotions. Sometimes they might not be able to just like give you the whole movie plot in a way, that is perfect. So it's our job as interviewers to extract that information and guide the conversation and ask the follow-up questions that we need in order to get the full picture. So I've incorporated an example of this customer service piece where it says, great, here's our question. Tell me about a time that you provided great customer service. What happened? And I'm going to pretend I'm a candidate and the interviewer. So I'm going to be interviewing myself here just to give you an example of how this could go down and how I would guide the conversation. So let's pretend you asked that question. Tell me about a time you provided great customer service. What happened? The candidate might say, well, let's again pretend this is for a barista. I had a customer drive 50 miles for coffee and we were out of what they wanted. I ended up finding a way to help them. Great. Candidate, again, might be nervous. They didn't give you the full picture, but they gave you a little tidbits here. So it's our job to follow up on that story. So what I took out of that, the situation the candidate gave us is they had a customer drive 50 miles for coffee and they were out. Okay, cool. Well, what was the task you had at hand? They didn't tell us. And then what's the action they took? They didn't tell us. But they didn't tell us the result is that they found a way. So we just need to follow up with a few more questions. And general curiosity is going to help guide you through this. There's not a right formula, but sometimes we just have to take a breath and remember we're talking to just a person. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to feel like an interview. The more that you're able to make this feel like a conversation with somebody, the more honest and true of a read you'll get on them. So how do we follow up from here? We need to figure out what's the task at hand and what action they took. So if I'm the interviewer and I'm kind of just deciphering this information, the way I would respond to this, and I would say, okay, the customer drove 50 miles. What was it that they wanted? How did you find another solution? Right? What did they want? How did you decide what to recommend to them? So if I asked somebody that, they could follow up and say, well, I knew I couldn't have them walk out empty-handed, so I made it my mission to help them find another product. Great. I gave them free samples of 10 of their drinks until they found what they wanted. Awesome. Okay, so now we know the situation, we know the task that they had at hand, we know the action that they took, and we know the result is that they found a way to help them out, but I want to learn a little bit more about that. So did they find anything they liked and were they happy? See, we're just having a conversation. I'm just getting the full picture. Think of it as a movie or a book. We need to know what happened. So they found a way to help them out. They ended up liking 3 other drinks. So I set them up on our rewards plan and they were thrilled. So by me following up with those additional 2 or 3 questions, instead of taking that first answer they had, look at this different answer we got. So the first thing they told us, I had a customer drive 50 miles for coffee. We were out. I helped find them a solution. Cool. Instead, I had a customer drive 50 miles for coffee. We were out. I knew I couldn't have them walk out empty-handed, so I made it my mission to help them find another product. I gave them free samples of 10 other drinks until I found out what they wanted. I found a way to help them. They ended up liking 3 other drinks, so I set them up on a rewards plan and they were thrilled. So by us having those follow-up questions, what was that additional information we gathered? We found out they're a creative problem solver. Cool. That's really what we were trying to figure out from that question. But we have some bonus things here too. We found out they have great customer service. We found out they have patience to give people 10 samples. We found out that they probably have mission alignment with our company because they were wanting to help people. They cared about getting them signed up on the rewards program. They seemed like they really cared and were invested in finding a solution. So again, for you as an interviewer to expedite your ability to connect and really get to know a candidate, you having these story-based questions that you're following up on and getting the full picture here, you're finding out all these additional pieces about the candidate that are going to make you either feel sure or unsure about, or I guess sure, or either sure that you're going to move forward or sure that you're not going to move forward. So that's why star interviewing is my favorite topic. Then now going back to this compliance piece. So let's just rewind here for a second. We talked about all the prep work we need to do, the job ad that we need to post, the interview process. So what are we requesting? How many steps do we have? We talked about all the different ways that candidates will show up to our interviews, approaching them with empathy if they might be scrambled. How do we structure our interview with that give and take to make sure that we're, guiding this process along in a way that they're going to share and feel comfortable? How do we ask these questions in a way that we're going to get the most out of our time? And then this piece, compliance, is we're talking about during that interview process, there sometimes are going to be questions that you might be tempted to ask, or that, topics that come up that could potentially open your company up for liability. And so I want to make sure that we're addressing what those risky areas could be and ways to rephrase those questions. So in the do's section, really we're asking them, again, we're focused on merit and ability. Do they have the skill? Can they work the schedule? Can you commute here? We're just asking them, can you perform these things that are on the job description? The areas we want to stay away from or that we don't want to, be engaging with are, sometimes, and again, these questions seem like totally random when you see them on pieces of paper, but they somehow come up. Like, are you married? Do you have children? Are you planning to? Do you have daycare coverage? Where are you from? What's your native language? Do you have any disabilities? What part of town do you live in? And what you'll notice with all of these questions is they have nothing to do with if the person can perform the functions of the job. And sometimes what people think when they're asking these questions, for instance, let's pretend you met a candidate and they come in and they say, oh yeah, my kids love, your restaurant. Like we love coming here as a family. That's why I applied to the job. Great. So then when the interviewer is going through the questions and you're asking somebody if they can work the schedule, sometimes since they have that context, they might say, okay, well, I know you had kids, is daycare going to be an issue for you? It does not matter if daycare is going to be an issue or if they have a part-time job on a broccoli farm or if they love yoga. What matters is that they can work the schedule that is required of them. So if you find yourself asking any of these questions that end up being more about the personal components of somebody, think about what is the core of the information behind that I'm trying to get at, and how do I rephrase that question in a way that is focused back on the ability and the job. So instead of, do you have daycare? It's, can you work this schedule? If somebody comes in and you want to know, if they speak Spanish, maybe that's beneficial to you in your position. You're not asking only people that have, a certain last name that might bring that to your attention. You'd be asking every candidate. There are people that can take Spanish classes. Just because somebody has a last name of a certain origin doesn't mean that they speak any specific language. So again, think about, what is it I'm trying to get at here? How do I rephrase that question in a way I can ask everybody? So for instance, in that language question, instead of asking somebody what their native language is or assuming they speak a certain language based on the origin of their name, we're asking everybody, hey, in this position, it could be beneficial, that somebody speaks a secondary language. Do you happen to be fluent in any other languages? And we're asking that again to everybody. So this is just like scraping the surface on this topic, but I wanted to make sure I slipped in a slide on this today. And again, we're here to help answer any questions you have if this comes up or you find yourself continuing to be in situations where you're talking about more personal things with candidates. And I also want to remind you to document your findings. So when you are talking with candidates and having these interviews, make sure there's a place that you're storing notes. The notes don't have any personal information, again, like the childcare or, any sort of disabilities or anything that's, protected. Make sure that in your document, you're again, looking at somebody's merit and ability to do the job. And that when you are, reviewing all the candidates you've talked to at the end of the day, you're looking at the interview templates next to one another and saying, why did I choose this person? Oh, because their answers were all a 10 when I asked them these stories. It makes sense why we hired them. We're kind of double checking ourselves to make sure no bias is slipping in when we're making our decisions. Okay. And then lastly, I want to save 5 minutes. So we'll wrap this next section up in the next 2 minutes. But when you're talking about onboarding a new employee, again, all that is so much work to just set the foundation and hire somebody. And sometimes people get really comfortable at that stage being like, thank goodness the recruitment's over, just happy to have somebody with a signed offer letter. But the truth is, in order to seal the recruitment, I told somebody the other day, it's like painting your nails. And if you don't put the top coat on, they're probably going to chip off pretty quick. So we need to seal this up with a good onboarding program. So I just want to talk about these different components, which again, there's five different phases of this. So this is also a lot of work too, and probably warrants its own conversation, but pre-boarding. This is the period of time between somebody signing their offer letter and their start date. It is a crucial time that you are maintaining engagement with this employee. Some ways that people engage with employees during pre-boarding is we're thinking best practice. Best practice is when you're giving the employee an offer, tell them, hey, you'll hear back from me on this date. On this date, I'm going to send you all of the information you're going to know about your first day. And give that information, try to at least a week in advance. That way they can prepare, they know the address of where they're going to go. In that email, when you're telling them what to expect on their first day, include information about lunch. Should they bring their own lunch? Do you have a refrigerator, or are they going to be taken out to lunch? I don't know why I did that. Do they know where to park? What's the dress code? What do they need to bring with them? Those are kind of the 4 core areas that we need to make sure we're giving people so that they feel prepared. If we don't, I've seen people just fall off. Maybe they got another offer from somewhere else and the other company is just on it and they hadn't heard any news from you in between. Do not let that step be why you lose the person you've spent so much time, time getting an offer out. It keeps like auto sliding over. When it comes to orientation, this is now somebody's first day. That's what I think of. First day or first week. This is when we're giving them information about that they need in order to understand their team, their department, or role within a company. Typically, orientation will look like you're giving people a rundown on what you all do. Give them a tour of the building. Where is the bathroom? Who are their coworkers? Start introducing them to people and make sure they understand what the company is. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry about this. Onboarding. So this is past orientation. Now that they've done all their paperwork, they know, what the company does. We're really talking about onboarding their position, which is training, getting them acclimated. This usually is like 90 days and beyond. We're making sure that they have team members that they, are interacting with. We're making sure that we have a schedule for them on here's what we expect of you. Here's your job description. Here's our training plan. And here's where we're going to get you. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry about this toggling back and forth. Here's how we're going to get you to the point of, you know what to do for your role. Performance management. As we're going through the onboarding, we're having regular conversations. What's going well? What's not going well? What can I do to support you as your manager? It's really as simple as having conversations and staying on top of it. So it's not only when things are bad, we're also giving recognition. We're also not saving any sort of critical feedback until somebody has their 1-year review. The sooner we're giving people that feedback on their performance and coaching them and guiding them, the sooner we can get ahead of it and not allow people to create bad habits. And then the last piece, retention. This is more of your ongoing piece. Like maybe somebody reaches 1 year, they're onboarded with all their tasks, but we need to make sure we retain their engagement. This is how we're, doing more of those birthday celebrations or work celebrations, work picnics, maybe March Madness bracket in your office. This is more of those soft, those soft employee touch points, culture focus. So, I know I just ran this up basically until the last few minutes, but that was, the main areas I wanted to cover, and a part of my screen keeps flopping back and forth. So I'm going to go back to our first slide and open it up for questions.
Jessica, I have one just comment or thought for people as people prepare questions, and it's when you get to that final decision. So you've decided who you're going to hire. Let's say you had 3 finalists and you decided to hire one person and you had good reasons for hiring. I think one of the best things people can do is then with the other 2 that you didn't hire is give them a personal phone call to talk to them. Don't just send them a form letter, because if something with that first employee doesn't work out, you still have those people engaged, and they might have another, in another 6 months, maybe they'll work for you. So those people that I could have hired them, but I had somebody who was just a little better, make sure you reach out to them and let them know, hey, we love having you here. We'd love to maybe have you work for us one day. We just had a candidate with a little stronger, background or experience than you did, but we think you're a great candidate. We'd love to have you work with us one day. Please keep engaged. We'll reach out to you if we have another position open.
Absolutely. I love that point. Thank you for bringing that up. Cool. Okay. Well, what questions do we have? I know I just spit a ton of information at you, so I apologize, but I hope it was helpful. Okay, let's see in the chat here. How about references? Any advice on it? Can we ask anything? That's a great question. So when it comes to references, usually where I see the value in that coming is when I request references. Sometimes I anticipate other companies' policies being that they aren't allowed to give references, which kind of makes it difficult. Sometimes they can confirm dates, but sometimes we aren't able to get that information. I'm usually more interested in who people list. So are they listing, their past employers? If they're not listing their past employers, why are they not doing that? Why are they listing their friend from yoga or whatnot? So usually I'm kind of more looking at like the underlying component of that is if they're listing every single past manager they've had with their email number, whatever, that kind of speaks to me on probably the relationships that they've had, which makes me feel more secure anyway, even if they aren't allowed to give them. I see somebody else with a hand up. Leticia?
Sí, tengo una pregunta. En una experiencia que tuve años atrás, siempre al último me hacían preguntas. Me preguntaban la última pregunta. ¿Tienes alguna pregunta para mí? Y en 2, 3 entrevistas no contesté, pero después investigué qué quería decir esa última pregunta y a qué me llevaba. Entonces, en una entrevista la hice, me involucré con esa pregunta y pasé a la siguiente etapa. ¿Quiere decir algo en el proceso esa última pregunta?
A candidate or a client or like a employer?
Siempre me he preguntado si es que para mí esa pregunta siempre me recuerda porque fue óptima para mí para pasar al siguiente proceso. Porque en otras compañías, cuando yo me iba a entrevistar, me hacían esa pregunta. Al final del cuestionario que iban apuntando, me decían, ¿tienes alguna pregunta para mí? Y yo me quedaba callada. Pero me cuestionaba esa pregunta y en un proceso de selección de muchas personas me hicieron esa pregunta y yo la contesté. Me desarrollé en contestarla y pasé al siguiente proceso. ¿Tiene algún significado esa última pregunta para ustedes como entrevistadores o como...
Oh, yeah. I think what it means is that I'm curious if the candidate has, done research or maybe what their interests are in. If the candidate, maybe the last follow-up question is, oh, what, developing is really important for me as an employee. What development opportunities do you have in your organization? Or, culture or mission and vision and value is really important for me as a candidate. What does your company do out in the community? Or what are, your primary focuses as an organization. So it's good to just follow up and see kind of like what is mattering to the candidate. Do they come interested and prepared, or did they just show up not really knowing who they're interviewing with and take the information and leave? It's more of the preparation piece people are looking for and what matters to the candidate. And I saw one more question here too from Veronica saying, as a small business, where can I check the background check for people filling the job application? What I recommend in your job ad is saying our pre-employment process is conducting, upon employment, we do require a pre-employment background check and references. More stringent background check. Or are you meaning what needs to be checked for backgrounds? Are you Veronica, are you wanting to know what needs to be checked through backgrounds, or at what point you can ask somebody if they have any hits on their background check?
Oh, hello.
Hi.
You here? Hi.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hi. That's okay.
I'm working, but I'm hiding.
That's okay.
Okay. So yeah, my question is because I am the process for the first time. I need to get people for working in my small company. This is a cleaning company.
Yeah.
So I don't know where I can check the background for the hiding. yeah, people.
Yeah. Okay, so actually, maybe I'll send you my email address because we actually have a background company too called Background Brief. And what happens is when you have an employee, you could send us, their email address and we can get them set up with a link to do a background check online and we can help you monitor the results of that. And I think it starts at like $35 per background check. So if you need any help with that, we can help you.
Oh, yes, I
Yeah.
will appreciate that. If you can
Okay.
send me the information.
Yeah, I'm gonna put my email address in this chat here, okay?
Okay, I will copy.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And
Okay, have a good day. Bye.
Thank you, Veronica. Gemma, I saw you have your hand raised. If you want to go ahead and ask your question, please.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I decided to speak. I think it's a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you can give me a little bit of tips about you are having an interview, you really like the candidate, and you kind of want to put that vibe there, but you probably want to say, if reference check, we want to hire you, because there is always, how do you manage the next step? How do you put them in interest and showing that you have interest without getting into a situation?
Yeah, I recommend whatever process you're going to follow for any candidate, you follow for all candidates. So if you have one interview with somebody and you're like, oh my gosh, they're perfect, but you know that your steps usually has 2 interviews, say, hey, I really enjoyed this conversation. I want to move this process forward, but I do have to follow our process. Our next step is meeting with whoever on our team. And I want to get this scheduled as soon as possible. When are you available next? And then try to make that work as fast as possible. And then you can ask them too, say, I want to make sure, are you in the last steps interviewing anywhere else that I need to be aware of as far as your timeline goes? Because if you have any other offers come through, please keep me posted. I want to make sure we get our opportunity to work you through this process if you are as interested as we are.
Okay. Is it a good idea, following this very quickly? Sorry, I want to take all the time.
Okay.
But this is a very difficult market right now to hire mental health therapists. And like, they just get robbed like that.
Yeah.
So, like, how do you feel about, like, say, like, if they tell you, well, I'm still interviewing and I want to finish the interviews and I'm not ready to commit. And then I usually say, okay, well, then I'll hear from you. But then I feel like I lost all the control of the situation. How do you handle that?
Usually when that happens, I just put my foot on the gas and I try to find more people and I just keep my process going. And then if they come back to me, then great. And if they don't, then I at least wasn't waiting. But normally what that means for me is I need to keep interviewing. So I'm not holding all my eggs in a basket.
But you give them a date, let's say, because some people will be like, when do I need to tell you yes or no?
If you offer them. Yeah. I always have an expiration date on our offer letters, which is another piece we didn't really talk about. I need to say this offer is good until X date. And if they don't respond by then, I take it and move on. But normally I put 2 to 3 business days from the date I'm offering, and I list that date on the offer letter.
I wasn't doing offer letters, so I understand now why they're important. Okay.
Yeah, and if you need help with templates or anything too, we have some.
Yes.
We have a lot of stuff. Yeah,
yes,
and my email's in the chat too, so let me know.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Yes, absolutely. Thanks.
You're welcome. And then I see Jose has a question as well.
Sí, mire, yo tengo una pregunta acerca de como lo que dijo cuando contrata uno a alguien. Bueno, por lo que estoy escuchando, yo estoy entendiendo mal que no es obligatorio como hacerle un chequeo de récord, como el background que le llaman, no es necesario, o sí lo tiene uno que hacer.
Yeah, that's totally optional, and it depends on the position in your company and you weighing the risk of if you think it warrants a background check or not. One thing around background check compliance is that if you do conduct one background check for somebody, you want to make sure you are doing it for everybody. You're not just spot checking like, oh, I want a background check on you and not on you. So make sure if it's something you do implement, it's not required. If it would help you feel better about the employees, depending on your positions, you can, but make sure it's consistent either way.
Está bien, muchas gracias.
Yes, you're welcome. Great. Did we get everybody's questions? I think so. Right on.
Yeah, Jessica,
Good.
thank you so much for all the insights. I would imagine there might be a few follow-up questions. If any of you have other questions about onboarding, recruiting, hiring, interviewing, all of that, or keeping people, employees engaged once they've been hired, please let us know. You can send a message to myself or to Gustavo. We can also get you information. I think Jessica is going to put her contact information in the chat. You can also reach out directly to her. As we mentioned in the beginning, we know a lot of you have had ongoing challenges with recruiting, hiring, and maintaining, keeping qualified employees. So this isn't a topic that's going to go away. It's one that's going to kind of continue to evolve over time, and we are always here to support you. So big thank you out to Jessica Ortman for all the great information and all the work that she does with True Calling Recruitment at HR Annie. Thank you again to Jessica Dover for her always present translating services. And thank you all to you, all of you who participated in our workshop today. We appreciate your interest, your engagement, your participation, and your questions. If anything else you need to know, please get a hold of us. We have a bunch of other workshops. Just look at our events calendar on the Chamber of Commerce website to see all the exciting things that we have planned for the fall, including more in-person workshops. So, and thank you again to my great colleague Gustavo for monitoring the chat and helping get everything set up. Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful day. We'll all see you sometime very soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Nice meeting you. Bye.